Today, we're going to be talking to Annie Scott Riley and Brett Diamond of Minnesota ROKKR and Version 1 about their experience starting an esports franchise. Stay tuned.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Lawyers with Game. If you're interested in learning more about video games and esports and some of the legal issues in those fields, you are in the right place. My name is Darius Gambino, and I am first and foremost a lifelong gamer. I've played on just about every home console from the original Atari to the Nintendo GameCube and to now the PlayStation 5. I am also an intellectual property attorney with over 20 years of experience advising clients on issues related to patents, trademarks, and copyrights. I am with the law firm of Saul, Ewing, Arnstein, and Lehr in Philadelphia, and you can find me on Twitter as @PhillyIP. With me today is my colleague Leah Leyendecker. Leah and I are both members of the Video Gaming and Esports Practice here at Saul Ewing. Leah is going to say a few words about herself and introduce our very special guests for today from Version 1.
Thanks, Darius. I am so excited to be back recording another episode of Lawyers with Game. Like Darius mentioned, I am also an attorney here at Saul, Ewing, Arnstein, and Lehr, located in our Minneapolis office. And I advise clients on a range of business and IP issues, both general corporate and contract matters, as well as trademarks and commercialization of IP assets. In terms of gaming, my recent addiction is Rocket League on Nintendo Switch, which may or may not have been influenced by this episode's guest. But my gaming beginnings go back to camping out with my sister in our basement playing Sega Genesis for hours on end. And today we are incredibly excited to welcome this episode's guests, Brett Diamond and Annie Scott Riley of Version 1. Version 1 is a multi-property esports organization headquartered here in Minnesota. And a little bit about each of them. Brett was named Chief Operating Officer of Version 1 when the organization was founded back in July of 2019, and today leads the organization's business operations. Before joining Version 1, Brett spent 3 years with the Minnesota Vikings, most recently as Director of Partnership Strategy, and 11 seasons in the National Football League's events department. In various roles on both operations and the business sides of the NFL's major events, Brett was involved in planning 13 Super Bowls and served as event director for the Pro Bowl for 2 years. From 2010 to 2016, Brett worked as a liaison for the NFL to communities bidding to host the Super Bowl, including working closely with the Vikings and the Minnesota community for Super Bowl 52. Annie oversees the creative and marketing teams at Version 1, and she is a lifelong gamer who also has 15 years of marketing and creative experience, beginning her career as a blogger in New York City and traveling the globe creating journalistic content for travel, fashion, luxury, and other lifestyle publications. Prior to joining Version 1, Annie served as the editorial director at Aveda and spent 7 years at marketing and advertising agencies in social and digital roles. Brett and Annie, we are so excited to have you on with us today. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Leah. And Brett and Annie, thank you so much for being on. If you like this video series, please like and subscribe to it. We hope to do a season 2 in the near future. If you want to learn more about myself or Leah, you can check out our law firm website at www.saul.com. If you're interested in some gaming, I am EaglesFan71 on the PlayStation Network, and Leah is Lilo904 on Nintendo Switch. Finally, please keep in mind that this series is intended to be a high-level discussion of legal issues in the world of video games. It is not intended as actual legal advice. If you need actual legal advice, please reach out to myself or Leah. Our email addresses will be in the description. So let's jump right into it, Brett and Annie. We are going to talk today about starting an esports franchise, and you both are intimately acquainted with this concept, having started the first Call of Duty League team in Minnesota, the Minnesota ROKKR. And you've also started esports teams, Version 1 teams playing competitive Rocket League and Valorant. And you both just got back from the Valorant Masters in Iceland, where the Version 1 team took things all the way to the North American Finals, which was unbelievable for a team that really just is getting off the ground. So first, I just want to ask you, what was Iceland like? What was that experience like? Can you give us some insight into that?
Yeah, thanks, Darius. I'll take first crack at it. Yeah, so I was with the team in Iceland, and it was an amazing experience for us as a new organization, and particularly new in Valorant. Only a few months in, for us to be a part of an event of that scale. I mean, there were so many firsts involved. It was the first Valorant LAN, first international event. Our team took part of the first North America versus EU match when we played Liquid on the third day of the tournament. So there were so many firsts, truly a historic event in an esports title that many people expect to be a staple of the esports scene for many years to come. And so for us as a new organization to have the opportunity to be a part of it was really incredible. And we saw tremendous growth by pretty much any metric you can imagine, in terms of looking at fan base engagement and social media followers, etc. So really an incredible experience overall. Certainly some unique aspects in terms of having some protocols to follow. We had to quarantine over there for 6 days on arrival, and there were obviously, for an international event with participants coming from several different countries, safety was a priority every step of the way. And fortunately, at least to my knowledge, there were no positive COVID tests from the group that was there, nothing that impacted the event. So we were all very fortunate from that standpoint. And our team did pretty well there. So we were pretty excited about it.
Yeah, it's definitely exciting, and I think it's paving the way for future live in-person events, which are coming up. I noticed right before we got on today that you're rolling out some in-person events around Minneapolis for the start of some ROKKR games that are coming up soon, some matches that are coming up soon. So all really exciting stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And when we qualified for Iceland, we were one of only 2 teams from North America to qualify. There were 10 teams total from around the world, and we really wanted to make the most of it. So we, and Annie can go into a bit more detail on this, since a lot of it falls into areas under her oversight. But we really went to every length possible. We lined up some additional outside resources to make sure that we could produce a level of content that we wanted, while also that same month leading into Iceland, we still had a Call of Duty League major for Minnesota ROKKR. We had a Rocket League major for Version 1's Rocket League team. We had some big announcements of streamers we were bringing on board. So May was probably the biggest and most impactful month in our organization's history. And Annie, if you want to go into a little more detail of some of the specific things we did around Iceland, that'd be great.
Yeah, I would love to. It was just an incredible experience and such an inflection point for us. There's so much going on in the organization, and it was just the exact right moment to have that spotlight turned on us. And I guess from a storytelling standpoint, our first thought was, all right, a lot of people who've never heard of us before are going to be looking. What do we want them to know? So we started listing those things out, and a lot of the programs that Brett just mentioned. In addition to that, we're working on a program called Visionaries, which is a series of tournaments that highlights women in gaming and gives them a chance to show what they've got. We've got ROKKR Regiment, which is our military appreciation program with Minnesota ROKKR. May just turned out to be an explosion of goodness for us. And we were so thrilled to be in Iceland, and the team really pulled together. The people here on the ground in Minnesota and elsewhere just, worked all day and all night, just making sure that we could make the most out of this incredible moment.
Leah?
Yeah, so I'm curious, the two of you both had extremely successful careers outside of the esports industry prior to joining Wise Ventures Esports, now Version 1. So I'm curious what drove your interest in gaming and esports and how you decided to make that shift.
Sure, I'll start. I have been a gamer my whole life. Like you, Leah, basement with my sister. I remember screaming our heads off when we got Super Mario Brothers 2 for Nintendo. I've been playing forever. My focus was always those turn-based RPGs. I really loved those. They don't make them very often anymore, but gaming has always been a part of my life. It's fun to take something that was your hobby and what you did to blow off steam and make that your full-time job. There's give and take to that. There's, sometimes it's a little less fun. Sometimes you need a break from gaming instead of gaming as a break from everything else. But it's just been an incredible experience, and the industry is just exploding. Once I saw kind of the white space for what you could do creatively in this industry, I was in. I was so excited to work on it, and I'm still excited to come to work every day.
Yeah, for me, most of my experience, as you mentioned at the top, Leah, had been in traditional sports with the NFL and the Vikings. And I never anticipated that my path would lead me into esports. And, certainly earlier in my career, it was barely a blip on the radar, prior to the last few years. But probably 4 years ago or so, I became very interested in how esports was quickly emerging as really a new and dominant form of entertainment. And so I was, pretty much had a professional obsession with it and would just read every article, anything in Sports Business Journal or Forbes or wherever that was covering the growth of esports. Anytime one of those articles crossed my path, it was like the first thing I'd read. When I got to the Vikings, the NFL was in the process of rolling out their first competitive gaming series around EA Madden that was going to involve each of the NFL teams. And so I essentially, being interested in the space, went to the leadership at the Vikings and offered to run this new program for them. And we were pretty successful with it for a few years. And I should say, for those who aren't familiar, Madden as a competitive esports title, it's down here, and what we're into now with Call of Duty and Valorant and Rocket League, it's not even on this, it's in a different stratosphere compared to the traditional sports titles. But it was a good first toe dip in the water for myself, for our ownership group, the Will family, who also owns the Minnesota Vikings, and we really got to learn a lot about the esports world. We were working with ESL, which is one of the top production companies in esports. We got to know the competitors and what they needed from just from a support standpoint, or what they needed in terms of practice areas, etc. Importantly, we learned a lot about how sponsors and brands would be integrated into the live stream, and how the production worked from that standpoint. So, one step at a time from there, I got more involved in some of the discussions that the Will family was having as they were exploring different opportunities to invest in the esports space. And they looked at a lot of different opportunities before things got serious with Activision Blizzard around Minnesota ROKKR. And at the time, it was more of just informally advising. I'd be on calls every now and then, and they just pick my brain from time to time. But once they had essentially secured the verbal commitment for the franchise rights for the Call of Duty League team in Minnesota, that's when I was approached by the Will family to switch roles, and we're run as a separate organization from the Vikings. I just like anybody else does when they leave a job, I resigned my old Vikings role, was hired by what at the time was Wise Ventures Esports, has now since we rebranded to version 1, and we made the formal announcement in July of 2019, and it's really been off to the races, a full sprint since then to really build. We've built this thing one step at a time. We started with one employee, myself, in July of 2019. Annie came on board in September of that year, and we had a couple other key hires around that time frame. And yeah, it's been a whirlwind. In some ways, it feels like it's been like 10 years, and in some ways, it feels like it's been like 2 months. It's been a fun, wild ride.
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
sorry, Leah.
No,
I just wanted
okay.
to add, actually, that Brett and I actually initially connected over a gaming commonality as well. So Brett called me in to interview, and we were talking about all sorts of things, about the industry and everything. And then somehow we managed to figure out that we had both, in high school, been obsessed with this really obscure online multiplayer text-based game called Gemstone. And it was a great connection point. And we actually named our main conference room after the world of that game.
That's great. That's
Yeah,
a great pick.
it's since been referred to by one of our staff recently, referred to it as some boomer game that Annie and Brett used to play. And
Correct.
we had to clarify that we're not technically boomers, but
I think we're philosophical boomers at this point.
it was text based, which probably puts it in a totally different world from most people currently can probably not imagine that.
So Brett and Annie, I wanted to ask you a little bit about the branding. The ROKKR and version 1 have some great branding. You have gear out there that you have for sale, really, creating a lifestyle brand around the ROKKR and version 1. What are some of the considerations that went into the branding that you developed?
I'll start. So Minnesota ROKKR was developed in partnership with a team at the Minnesota Vikings. Before I even joined the organization, Brett worked on that with them. And it is such a rich brand. So it has this unique kind of Nordic heritage. You can see the connection to the Vikings there if you want to, but you don't have to if you don't want to see it. It stands on its own, certainly. It's this helmet that is appearing in twilight, and there's this beautiful blue glint along the side of it, which is moonlight shining on it from the back. But then the eye is also lit, so that light is also coming from within. It's that sort of supernatural, intelligent spirituality kind of a thing lighting it up. So it's this very spooky, dark, and warrior-centered brand, which I was so excited to work on from the beginning. But, since there, we've had so much fun with it, playing with shape-shifting and the idea of the mascot. And we have what we call an anti-mascot, where he's never there trying to get fans to, cheer. He's not taking photos with babies or anything like that. He'll, appear on a balcony, and people start to go, hey, you guys see that? Is that the mascot? And then he's gone. Just spooky. But what we really try to achieve with it is this concept of helmet on and helmet off. So when you have the helmet on, you're this warrior, you're spooky, you're dark, you're unstoppable. And when you have the helmet off, we're just a fun esports organization. We're here to have a good time. We're all about the good vibes. And I think that duality is really appeals to gamers because they understand it. They do it themselves every time they go into a game. I am a mother of 2 children sitting in a suburban house, but also if you get me into Call of Duty, I am absolutely deadly. And people really love that duality, and it's something that's been fun for us to play with from a branding standpoint.
Yeah, I'll add, and I'm going to particularly enjoy this part of the podcast because I can really nerd out on what we had to go through from a trademark perspective. And obviously, Leah, you're welcome to chime in because we were fortunate to work with you and the firm on that. But one of the unique things that every team that was in our league had to go through was a very short turnaround to determine branding, get at least basic trademark clearances through, and the research done and filed. If you look at, so there's an NHL team in Seattle that'll start play next season, right? The Seattle Kraken. That expansion team was awarded, I don't know, probably 5 years ago or so, and they named it probably 2 years ago. So they had 2 years before the name was ever spoken publicly, and they had another 2 years to build the brand before they'll ever play a match. We announced that even there was going to be a team in July. We only knew we signed the paperwork a few weeks before that, and we were playing our first match 6.5 months later. And so we had to very quickly narrow down the list of what we could potentially name the team. And and Annie alluded to it. We knew early on that we wanted to tie into Norse mythology, have some ties to the Minnesota Vikings, but without making it so in your face. Our literally, we talked about in a conference room early on that we wanted the branding to feel a bit like the Vikings, but not so much that if you were a Packers fan or a fan of another NFL team, that you would be turned off by it, because we want to make sure we have a broader appeal than that. And actually, we haven't talked a lot about this publicly. I think we've mentioned it in a podcast or two along the way. But the first name that we really liked was ROKKR, which is the end of the world in Norse mythology. But we weren't sure if we could get the trademarks through because Marvel has those trademarks locked up for, or Disney has those trademarks locked up for some of the Marvel movies. And I think, since you said it's not actually legal advice, I guess I'll say this. We kind of felt like given like 2 or 3 years to work through the process, we would probably be distinct enough where we could figure it out. But we had 6 weeks to make a decision and start branding and start creating merchandise and start creating player uniforms and all of the graphics that were going to be part of the game and part of the competitions. So we were stuck. Like, we really liked that name. We really, really liked the concept. And we were literally looking at where the word ROKKR written out, and the literal translation of that is Twilight of the Gods. And we're sitting there looking, we're like, we really like that. And, maybe ROKKR, maybe we can make that work. And it's the translation of Twilight in Old Norse or Old Norse language. And so ultimately, what we really wanted to take a little bit of a step back is a name that didn't seem like it was trying too hard to be like cutesy gaming and esports, but was also something that you're not going to see. We didn't want something that could be a high school mascot, right? And or very generic. And so ultimately we're pretty happy with where we landed. And the truth is we knocked out probably 30 different names in that trademark process, but none of them we actually liked better than Minnesota ROKKR.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic logo, and to pull it together in that time frame, as you said, I've worked on some of those branding deals in the past for sports, and you have so much lead time when you're rolling out a new franchise to really go through all of that, do your trademark searching, look at different color sets and things like that, and to pull that all together in 6 weeks and have a fantastic recognizable brand like
well, let us tell you about really version amazing. 1.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to hear about that next.
That was even quicker.
No, version 1, it was a faster process. We had been working for a long time on what we wanted to name the organization. So we had a mountain of work that we were standing on, but we did decide to go into Rocket League and thought we had, a couple of months to pull it together and get the name figured out and all that. And then, paperwork's all signed and we find out, it starts in, was it 2 weeks? Like, it was 3 weeks from the time we signed, but we didn't find out until we only had 2 weeks left between then and our first game. So we started throwing around names that we intended to be temporary, things like temporary team name and cool esports name, things like that. And then version 1 came to the table and everyone was just kind of like, wait a second, that sounds like a thing. So we decided to go ahead and go with that. And it was very cart before the horse. It was very much building the plane while flying it. And what ended up happening was the doors kept flying open. We were able to, begin our trademark process. We were able to start nailing some things down that were really pretty important to us. And as time went on, the team was just enjoying working with that brand so much that we decided to keep it going and ended up making it the name of the organization as a whole versus just the Rocket League team as a temporary thing. But yeah, what we've been building around that is really all around, improvement and versioning, obviously, the idea of, the act of creation being something so completely special and the bravery it takes to actually go ahead and make something, just get a first version out there. And we really think that represents our staff and our team and our players, and it's been fun to continue developing that.
Brett and Annie, version 1's team currently include Minnesota ROKKR in the Call of Duty League, version 1 in Rocket League, and version 1 in Valorant. I'm curious what your experience has been in operating multiple leagues run by different game publishers. One area I know that's come up is in terms of team names and branding.
Yeah, Leah, that's a great question, and that's really one thing that we've learned very well over the course of the last 2 years is how much of a difference there can be from one game publisher to another, one league to another. With Call of Duty League, which is under Activision Blizzard, it's a very formal league structure. They hired several people that came from traditional sports as well as esports. and have built out a structure that feels very familiar to people that come from the traditional sports world. The first commissioner of Call of Duty League, Johanna Ferries, was somebody that I worked closely with at the NFL. She was a VP in the marketing department when I was there. And there's a significant franchise fee involved in Call of Duty League. I can't say what it is. There's been some published reports. People can Google and look that up if they so choose. But when you're paying a franchise fee of any type, you obviously, that comes with expectations of the level of organization that you'll see, and you definitely have that with Activision Blizzard and Call of Duty League, as well as Overwatch League. Is there other franchised league that we are not a part of? Rocket League is different. It's a pretty small staff that runs the esports side of Rocket League. They do a phenomenal job given how lean their team is. But it carries with it different expectations, right? When you're paying a significant franchise fee, and you expect a level of communication from the game publisher that you might not in a situation where you don't have, where you're not making those financial commitments. You expect your calls to be returned a little quicker, right? But generally speaking, when you're in a franchise league like we are with Call of Duty, it's a long-term commitment, right? Like, we have a contractual commitment with the game publisher. We intend to be business partners, essentially, in perpetuity. Whereas with Rocket League, and we absolutely think that Rocket League has an enormous future as an esport, but we don't have the same contractual commitments. We essentially, if we wanted to get out of Rocket League tomorrow, which we don't, you have some buyouts that you'd have to do with your players, but there's no contractual commitment that keeps you there long term. Valorant, I would say, is probably somewhere in the middle in terms of the organization. Riot's reputation as an incredible game publisher for esports is well earned. We saw that firsthand when we were in Iceland. Their success with League of Legends it's by far the most successful esport on the planet from an audience and a business perspective. Now, we expect that with their investment in Valorant, it's already paying dividends after only a year. And so we expect Valorant to continue to grow, and frankly, that's a big reason why us and other organizations are in Valorant, is you're essentially investing in what you expect Riot as the game publisher will accomplish over time. Now, it's in its infancy, and it's not, we truly don't know what their plans are in terms of franchising, if/when any of that, but we expect that the scene around Valorant will continue to evolve and become more formalized and more professionalized over time. But it already is doing viewership that was double. The viewership in Iceland was double or more what Call of Duty League was at its peak last year. So with the three titles that we're in, Call of Duty, Valorant, and Rocket League, we really feel like these are the right three titles for the future of esports, both short-term future for us to build a new brand around, but even long-term, that these are the titles that we think are going to stand the test of time and be around, years from now. And in some ways, that's really what everything in the esports industry is. You're sort of placing a series of bets on, what game titles, what game publishers are going to be successful short-term and long-term.
So from an outside perspective, it seems to me that esports companies tend to wear multiple hats. You work as competition organizers, rights holders, content creators. So I'm curious your perspective on the ways in which these roles, maybe either complement or perhaps conflict at times, and also how you've been able to build such a successful team to operate in so many different capacities in such a short time.
We certainly all wear a lot of hats, that is for sure. I will say one thing that I've been grateful for, deeply, deeply grateful for since the very beginning, has been Leah. Leah and the whole team at Saul, you guys have been amazing. Just being able to recognize that we're not experts in every single thing that we need to do every day in order to fill all those different roles has been incredibly important. I'm never going to stand up and go, all right, I'm a trademark expert now. I'm always going to ask Leah. And I've been grateful from the beginning that we had help all along the way, and someone who we could ask all of our crazy questions and say, okay, Discord is really confusing, but this is what we think we're asking. And we're not sure how it applies with employment law and whether it is employment, and it's a real mess sometimes. But it's a glorious mess. It's a lot of fun. It is complicated hiring people and helping them understand, the flexibility that you need to have to work in this industry, and how, if you look at something and you don't know how to do it, that doesn't mean, oh, it's just going to be somebody else's job. You have to figure stuff out, and you have to be motivated to do that. You have to want to figure stuff out. And so we're always looking for individuals who are interested in driving things forward, who have the appetite to grow this business and make it everything it can be. Some people get really frustrated by the ambiguity of like, oh, I don't really know how that works. I guess I don't feel like I understand how to move forward here. And some people, they just figure it out. And those are the rock stars in this world from what we've seen.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, that ambiguity that exists. There is no blueprint for what we're doing. There's certainly several esports and gaming organizations that have been incredibly successful, but everyone is built a little bit differently. The circumstances of a team starting today is very different from one that existed a few years ago. And so, for us, we really work hard to, I'd say first on the staffing side, we really were very intentional about finding a mix of people from different backgrounds. And our first 3 hires are a good articulation of what we tried to accomplish early on and what we've tried to do since, where, so I was the first employee, came primarily from traditional sports. Ashley Glassel, gamer name is Midnight, is our content director. She was our second employee, joined us. She had a long history as a content creator with Optic Gaming, one of the iconic brands in esports, and particularly in Call of Duty. And then Annie was our third employee with this great background in social media and working with brands, but was really early on, we would say Annie's our storyteller in chief and brought that experience. But we had 3 people from very different backgrounds. We bounced a lot of ideas off each other, and that's really the culture we've tried to create from day one. And it's easier when you've got 3 people and you're just like, hey, what do we do now? Boom, boom, boom. Than it is, we're now up to 25 full-time staff plus players and coaches. We're in the process of a next round of hiring that'll bring us into the 30s in terms of full-time staff. So we've grown very quickly in those 2 years, 2 months. But from the start, that's always been our goal, is to find that balance of traditional sports, esports, and then outside perspectives, because there is no right answer. There is no, there's not the esports way or the traditional sports way that's necessarily going to be successful. It's about having having candid conversations and bouncing ideas around to come up with, what makes the most sense for us with Minnesota ROKKR, at least in this market in Minnesota. With version 1, it's a national and international aspirationally as a brand, but what's the right decision for us in this moment? And to Annie's point, there's a ton of ambiguity, and you just, that's both the fun part and the challenge of the next step is rarely clear.
You just have to keep stepping.
You just have to just go with it sometimes.
As Annie alluded,
yep.
As Annie alluded, I've had the pleasure of working with both of you since the early beginnings of version 1. And it has truly been amazing to witness firsthand your ability to make and execute so well growth plans and plans to diversify your content offerings. It's been a really fun experience for me.
Thanks, Leah. We're very tired.
Yes, likewise. There's I can't even count the number of questions. Yeah, like Annie said, it's like we're not even sure exactly what question we're trying to ask. So here's a little bit of information, and maybe we talk about it, and you tell us if we're going to be doing anything illegal. Hopefully not. We don't like to do illegal.
We will definitely keep you out of jail, I think.
I hope so.
One of the last things I wanted to ask the two of you about was branding and partnerships. Obviously, a huge thing in esports. You're seeing more and more quote unquote traditional brands and luxury brands getting into esports. We saw Mercedes-Benz and BMW getting involved in tournament branding and in team branding. So how do you go about selecting the partners that you work with for branding and sponsorships?
Yeah, well, it's been an exciting few months for us where we just announced our biggest partnership yet, which is with USAA Insurance, and it's a really exciting partnership. Annie referenced our ROKKR Regiment program, which is a custom-built military appreciation initiative that we're doing hand in hand with USAA. So there's a couple things, and that's an example of where you hear so much when you enter the esports world that you need to be authentic. You need to be authentic, and I've heard people literally ask me how do we be authentic? It's like, well, I don't really know how to explain that other than just be authentic, right? Like, don't try to pretend you're something you're not. Don't try to understand things you don't, but ask the questions and listen and learn. For us, when we're ultimately for any brand, and I don't think this is really more true of esports than it is of traditional sports. There's just more scrutiny from the consumer in esports and gaming. You need to add value to the fan experience and to the consumer experience. And if you're doing that, you're going to see positive results. And if you're not doing that, if you're just slapping your logo on something to slap your logo on something, you're probably not going to get very far with it. And so that's what we've seen. We've seen a lot of progress, even just in terms of the number of different brands that are interested in it. And Darius, you mentioned a few, and Annie has past experience in the luxury brand space, so I'm sure add some thoughts in a second. But what I've seen a lot of, and what I expect to continue to see, is, so I'll give you an example, and I intentionally pick a brand that we're not working with, which is Verizon. So 2 years ago, Verizon had no presence in esports. T-Mobile did, and AT&T did. Now, at some point, Verizon saw, and I'm just speculating here what went into the decision making, but at some point they looked around and they saw what their competitors were doing. They made some hires, some people that maybe thought about esports a little bit differently. And over the course of last year, they've rolled out several major partnerships and now have a major stake and presence in esports, where they're a major partner and sponsor of Rocket League, of Valorant. They have a presence around Valorant Game Changers, which is a big initiative for Riot around the women's scene in competitive Valorant. And so you've really seen, and I think that's what you'll see over the next few years, where you'll see an industry that might only have one big brand that's currently sponsoring or spending marketing dollars in esports. And it's only just a matter of time until other brands in those same industries see what their competitors are doing and start to see that opportunity. So we're seeing that, on a micro team by team level, but long term, that's where I think we'll just continue to see that exponential growth year over year in terms of the brands that are involved and how they're getting involved.
And I would just add to that, brands aren't really what they sell. Brands are the way they make you feel. A brand like a luxury brand that has an ethos that matches one of ours would be a terrific partner for us. And we're definitely looking for brands who have that desire to play in kind of that, aggressive, dark magic, spooky place that ROKKR is. Or in version 1, we have that sense of self-improvement and constantly trying to better yourself and become the best that you can be, and the bravery of creating something. These brands want to reach this demographic that we have this unfettered access to. We have access to a demographic that doesn't watch TV. They aren't doing the normal things that advertisers have used for years to market to people and push messaging to them. They're playing games and they're watching esports. So we're always looking for brands who have something within their ethos that matches ours, so that we can work together to create something that feels really unique to them, and also that gets our fans excited, that gets their fans excited, and makes the whole thing bigger than the sum of its parts.
Well, Brett, Annie, this has been a great discussion. I would love to keep talking about some of these issues surrounding the formation of the ROKKR in version 1. It's really interesting stuff to hear the backstory. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for coming on with us. If you have any questions about any of the legal issues we've raised on today's podcast, drop them into the comments, and Leah and I will try to answer them without providing any real legal advice, of course. Until next time, I'm Darius, this is Leah, and we are Lawyers with Game. See you next time.